When it was airing, Game of Thrones was maybe the greatest TV show of all time. George R. R. Martin's writing seemed to translate mostly seamlessly into a TV setting. A TV show that was perfectly cast, has fantastic production quality, action, CGI, music, and general storytelling. I loved Game of Thrones and I loved the world of Westeros, until the last season completely dropped the ball so hard that it seems like me, so many people lost interest in Westeros. House of the Dragon definitely brought it back a bit, but I don't know if this is just me, but I never loved House of the Dragon, maybe because it was based on a history book recapping events, rather than an actual story with actual dialogue, so they had a similar problem to the last few seasons of Game of Thrones. They lack George R. R. Martin's unique character writing and storytelling. This is something that has now become abundantly clear to me, now that they've released A Night of the Seven, or Nine Kingdoms, the third series in the Game of Thrones universe. Now, I've never read the Dunk and Egg stories, and like I said, I lost some interest in the world of Westeros, so I wasn't exactly excited for this show, but man, was my excitement level misplaced. A Night of the Seven Kingdoms has finally brought back the feeling of the first few seasons of Game of Thrones, but within a completely different context. Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon are political thrillers in a fantasy setting with stories about dozens of different characters spanning the entirety of Westeros. They also include a lot of fantastical elements like magic, zombies, gods, and dragons, all while for the most part taking place during wartime. A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, on the other hand, takes place during peacetime, which you could feel in the lighter tone and humor, and it's more focused on a contained story and an individual main character, maybe the only actual main character in the Game of Thrones universe, Ser Duncan the Tall, and in the short amount of time we've known him, he's maybe become my personal favorite character from the world of Ice and Fire. I was wondering why. Why do I like Dunk so much? What is it about him that I connect to? Well, looking at my channel, it's not hard to tell where my interests lie. I like superheroes, anti-heroes, and villains are cool, but in my opinion, there's nothing better than a pure good superhero, a character willing to sacrifice parts of themselves for the good of others, a character who manages despite everything to do the right thing, a character who always manages to get back up despite the evil of the world pushing him down, a character who triumphs over that evil in the end in spectacular fashion. I don't know if it was intentional or not, but I think when writing The Hedge Knight, George might have drawn for what he has said to be considered one of his greatest literary influences, Stan Lee in the world of Marvel, as well as the rest of the world of comics, to write a superhero story in his world. Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, and Ser Duncan the Tall. Ser Duncan the Tall's actual name is Dunk of Fleabottom, and he has a tragic origin story. Growing up a poor underdog, he lost his parents at a young age, only to find a new parent figure to replace them. Like Uncle Ben, Alfred Pennyworth, or the Kents, the greatest superhero stories tend to include this aspect, a tragic origin that strips the character of their biological parents, but give them a morally just parental figure who turns them into the person that they would become. Our story begins right after Dunk's origin story. His father figure, his Uncle Ben, Arlen of Pennytree, dies, and Arlen of Pennytree remains very important to Dunk's identity and his morality. Not too long after that, Dunk gives himself an alter ego, a secret identity. Dunk of Fleabottom is the Peter Parker of the story, but Ser Duncan the Tall is Spider-Man. It's different, obviously. He doesn't exactly have a personal life or loved ones to protect from his enemies. He doesn't wear a mask that conceals his identity. For the most part, he does wear a mask, but it doesn't conceal his identity. It's obviously not one-to-one, but I think it's as close an equivalent as is realistically possible in the world of Westeros and in this medieval setting. His motivation for taking on this alter ego is so that people don't look down on him as low-born scum, but that he's also noble in that it would allow him to act as a knight without interruption or disrespect. Ser Duncan the Tall is a hero who fights for justice, he fights for people who can't fight for themselves, and, well, he fights supervillains. He's a kind-hearted soul filled with kindness and compassion that reminded me of Clark Kent or Steve Rogers, but he is also flawed in that he does definitely let his anger control him at times without thinking of the consequences. He's socially awkward, especially around the women he likes, and, well, to put it nicely, he might be on the slightly less intelligent side. I don't think he's stupid, but is certainly uneducated and generally unaware. He never questioned how Egg knew so much, despite being a stable boy at an inn. So he's a good person with flaws who just wants to do the right thing. And a lot of these characteristics reminded me of Peter Parker. He's a good person with a bit of a temper, maybe a little socially awkward at times. The intelligence is definitely not like Peter Parker, but I think in this world, it's a great way to make him more relatable. Not because the audience is stupid or uneducated, educated, but in this world, the commoners, which is what most people are mostly uneducated. And then there's Egg, who is Dunk's sidekick, his Robin to Dunk's Batman. Like how Dick Grayson's origin story mirrors Bruce Wayne's, so do Egg and Dunk. They both lost their mothers, both came from King's Landing, but while Dunk comes from the lowest rank in Westeros, concealing his lowborn status, Egg is a prince of the realm, hiding his highborn status by acting as a stable boy. Like Dunk, Egg, at least for a little while, also has a secret identity. Egg is Robin, Aegon Targaryen is Dick Grayson. It's honestly a really interesting twist on the secret identity idea, a hero's sidekick keeping his identity a secret from him, while also kind of being his inverse. It was done very well, with hints dropped throughout the series for people who already knew, or as foreshadowing for those who didn't. Just to sprinkle in a bit of a review here as well, I loved Dunk and Egg. Each character individually was perfectly cast and so well written and handled, but together they are such a fun and charismatic duo with so much chemistry and so much heart. They are definitely the crux of this story, which is why I'm definitely very excited for season 2, despite the fact that it seems like, and I haven't read the books, it was a completely new cast and setting. Ser Duncan the Tall also has a love interest who is immediately attacked by the main villain, a very common superhero trope, and then after gaining some allies to help fight the main villain in a final battle. Aegon Targaryen is the supervillain, the main villain of this series, something that is certainly different from Game of Thrones for the most part. There are a few straight up main villains like Ramsay Bolton and the Night King, but things tended to be a bit more gray. This series has a main hero and a main villain. The allies Dunk finds along the way are extremely important as well, as it shows he's not alone in his fight of justice. Raymond Fossaway is an absolute legend, quickly bonding with Dunk and showing a very similar level of caring and morality, and then Baelor Targaryen contrasts deeply with his brother Maekor and his nephew Aerion. He's kind, intelligent, wise, calm, collected, and just everything a good leader should be. In such a short amount of screen time, Baelor rised in the ranks of the fandom to become maybe the most universally beloved of the Targaryens, and yeah, it makes sense. The moment he came through the door with the Game of Thrones music playing in the background only to say he'll take Ser Duncan's side was, I mean, just so cool. And so we arrive at the final battle, and as any good final battle between a superhero and a supervillain, the superhero is the underdog. Sure, Dunk has the quote-unquote superpower of being a gigantic man, but Aerion has better armor, better training, is much more skilled, and a lot more brutal. Duncan the Tall is cut down. And it's here we get his origin story flashback, and I've seen people complain that these flashbacks were ill-placed, too long, or took away from what they really wanted to see, which is the battle. And I legitimately could not agree less. I enjoyed the flashbacks in and of themselves. The actor who played young Dunk was perfectly cast. It was very interesting to see the world of Westeros from this perspective again, and generally it had some really great moments. The true purpose, however, was to lead up to that one moment. Dunk is injured and alone. He follows his savior, his hero, Sir Arlen of Penetry, for days, never succumbing to his pain or even loneliness. He keeps on going until he physically can no longer, and it's then that Sir Arlen tells him to get up. God damn it, I love this moment. Dunk is beaten and broken, he's outmatched, he's down and out, and yet, despite everything, as Egg screams at him to get up, as Arlen tells him to get up, the crowd tells him to get up, he gets up, he keeps on going, keeps on fighting. Goodness triumphs over evil. Dunk isn't the most intelligent or most skilled fighter, but he has within him something primal and powerful, a tenacity, a willpower, strength, empowered by his allies, his friends, his mentor, and the people of the realm depending on him to exact justice. It's been around a week since this episode came out, and I just cannot stop thinking about this moment. I just finished test season, but every time I didn't want to study, I saw Sir Arlen in my head telling me to get up. Every time I pushed off a workout or took too long of a break from working, Sir Arlen's words, "get up," echoed through my brain as I see Dunk getting up despite everything. He climbs to his feet in an inspiring and triumphant moment. It might be a bit of a cliche, but damn it if it isn't one of the greatest uses of this cliche I've ever seen. And generally, it's a fantastic cliche. The camera work, the music, the editing, the sound mixing, Egg screaming "wait" with passion. The scene is just incredible, but it was also the scene that got me thinking about the series in a new light. Ser Duncan's rise reminded me of Batman, Superman, Spider-Man, and other superheroes who get knocked down, beaten, and broken by more powerful, more skilled, or more intelligent foes, only for them to rise in the name of good to overcome evil. This is what recontextualized the series for me. I only later learned that George R.R. Martin is a big comic book fan. He named Stan Lee in the same breath as J.R.R. Tolkien and William Shakespeare as his greatest literary influences.
Other respected literary figures, and Tolkien, of course, and I admire those three writers all enormously. But Stan Lee was probably more influential than any of them.
I think George R. R. Martin wrote a superhero story and did a fantastic job at it. And then in the best superhero stories, good typically triumphs over evil, but it comes with a cost. For a Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, that cost was Baelor Targaryen. This is brutal. A good man who would have no doubt been a fantastic king dies in Dunk's arms. In pursuit of justice, Dunk accidentally contributed to Baelor's death, something that the finale focuses on heavily. It's a tragic moment, but one very fitting of a superhero story. They do tend to have these bittersweet endings where again, good wins, but at a cost. Years ago in Game of Thrones, we learned that Ser Duncan the Tall had 4 pages written about him in the Book of Brothers, as opposed to Jaime Lannister's half a page. Jaime is a decorated knight, considered incredibly skilled and important, but Dunk has 8 times more pages written about him. It's clear that Baelor's death won't be in vain. Dunk will likely use it as fuel, as motivation to always honor the would-be king. Dunk is destined for greatness, to become maybe the most celebrated knight in Westerosi history, a true hero, a superhero of Westeros. But obviously not really. This isn't me saying that he's a legitimate superhero. He's not a superhero in the technical term, but what he is the Westerosi equivalent to a superhero, which is a lot more simple. Ser Duncan the Tall is a true knight of the 7 or 9 kingdoms. Beyond that, A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is just such a great series. So well written and well produced. The action is great, the casting is perfect, like genuinely blown away by some of the casting here. Egg's actor is legitimately special. He was 9 years old when he filmed this. I mean, incredible actor. I love the music in the world, I love the story, but I think above all else, I loved the characters, and I loved Ser Duncan the Tall. I can't wait to see these characters again.